Hey y'all, Boogie Night here, how's it going? And welcome to Giallo July. Now, if you couldn't tell by the big stupid grin on my face, I just watched a movie that I very much enjoy. And also, more importantly, I had a friend watch this movie with me and he ended up walking away liking it a lot as well. And I'm talking about Suspiria. And no, I'm not talking about any kind of documentary on the Swedish heavy metal band. I am talking about Dario Argento's 1977 work of dark art. Now, before I start talking about the intricacies of Suspiria and why I like it so much, I just want to take a minute or so to talk about Dario Argento himself. Now, in the last entry that I did where I ramble about movies, I talk about all sorts of different directors that led to the budding and flourishing of the Giallo subgenre, despite the fact that it hasn't really lasted too long. I want to say the bulk of the timeline of the Giallo genre started in the 1970s and probably lasted until the 1990s roughly. And I really haven't seen too many Giallo films since then, and I've talked about directors such as Mario Bava, Dino Tavella, Paolo Cavara, even Bruno Mattei could be considered a Giallo director, even down to the Gorefest director Lucio Fulci. Now, I'm not a fan of Lucio Fulci, but I actually will review one of his movies during this month. But let's talk about Dario Argento. Since I said also in the last entry, he's been considered the godfather of Giallo films, spanning his career from the early 1970s until its eventual decline in the early 2000s. Suspiria was not his big breakout Giallo film, although it is probably considered to be his most popular one. His first big breakout Giallo film was in 1970 when he recorded and released The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, which is actually part of a kind of a standalone trilogy, much like Suspiria is. But to the point to this day, Suspiria still holds at least a 90-something% rating on Rotten Tomatoes and is actually considered has quite the cult following and popularity among those that like this particular genre of film. Now, this is not the first time I've seen Suspiria, so spoiler alert there. I actually saw it 11, 12 years ago, I think, back in college. I haven't seen it since then, but I remember liking it so much, so when it came to the idea that I was going to do a series of movies based on the Giallo film, I wanted to start it off with Suspiria because it's something I so enjoy, and I think this movie is head and shoulders ahead of its time when it was recorded, and Dario's ideas and the way he brought it all together into one 90-minute movie was fantastic. Now, I actually watched this movie with Josh Wasabi today, and he and I were swapping comments throughout this whole time, but the overall concept, the overall agreement that we had was just every little thing was put together so well, and despite a couple of flaws, which I will go into, this movie is a work of art. I don't want to give away too many plot points because I really encourage y'all to go out there and get it. You can't stream it through Amazon Prime. I doubt you can get it on Redbox. Well, at least this version. There was a 2017 remake of this movie, which I will probably watch somewhere down the pike, strictly for comparison purposes. I don't think you can get it on Netflix. At least I don't think you can stream it on Netflix, but I could be wrong. But I encourage you, if you're a horror film fan, or a Giallo film fan, or even a mystery or thriller film fan, spend a couple of bucks. You can get it on Amazon for not too much. I actually bought the special edition anniversary a Blu-ray. Surprise, surprise there. You can get it on eBay. I'm sure there's other platforms you can get it on. But definitely check it out for yourself. And once again, it's only an hour and a half. I mean, you could burn through this quicker than a Game of Thrones episode. Not that there's anything wrong with Game of Thrones. I think it's a fantastic miniseries. So let's talk about this movie and why I like it. I'm going to leave the basic plot to the very end of it. The first part of this is the cinematography, is the way that all the scenes are captured. I think Dario Argento's camera work was flawless. He does so many different things and plays around with the sets all throughout the different scenes that it really adds to the atmosphere and the overall creepiness of this movie. I mean, from the start, when Jessica Harper gets into a cab to be taken to where the movie takes place. Just the camera angles over her shoulder to the cabbie, from him looking back at her into that with all sorts of different things, to later scenes where there might be a camera looking over a banister, or there's a scene when Jessica Harper's character is drinking a glass of wine, and the camera's actually panned to the fact it looks like that it's shot from a first-person perspective of that person actually drinking the glass of wine. In another scene where it's maybe going over a banister, but probably my favorite camera angle, which once again, way ahead of its time in the 1970s, was a scene with one of the characters, a blind man, and his dog, and you hear some sound effects in the background, you're not sure what it is, but then the way the camera's panned, it's coming up overhead from a vertical, so it's looking down at you, but it's basically swooping over this guy that if it was shot today, you could only think of it be considered it was a drone shot, like a drone is actually flying over this person. But since it's in the 1970s, and Josh actually pointed this out, which of course, minor flaw if you're nitpicking, you could see the guide wires that the camera was attached to. But it's not like we were watching Disco Godfather where, you could turn the boom mic penetration in the scene into a drinking game or anything like that. It was very well executed, and I don't think many other movies in that time frame, or even in later time frames like the 80s, could do those intricate camera angles, those over-the-head shots, the over-the-shoulder shots. It was definitely something that fascinated me, and it was definitely something that I know Josh liked immensely. Another big reason I like this movie is the color scheme. Dario Argento includes a lot of different color angles that pans into the camera angles as well to accent the overall creepy vibe that is this movie. There could be scenes where maybe it's green light or blue light or red light that just shows up in different parts, which is accent everything together. So I mean, if you have Jessica Harper's character and one of her schoolmates / friends, and they're talking about something, there might be some green light reflected in one of their hair that's coming out up through maybe a stained glass window. There's a couple of scenes where there's red lights all over a certain hallway, which accents the shadows of the characters maybe walking or running down the hall, or even just the colors of a particular room, whether it be white like a bedsheet, whether it be dark blue. It just fits in with that overall vibe and just adds to the immersion and the creepiness of this movie. I've seen a lot of horror movies, some of the older ones, some of the newer ones, but I've never seen one that uses a color scheme like that to just help add to the overall vibe. And I think it was very well done, and I think Dario had the right mindset when he decided to bring that in. Sorry, it's a little warm in here. Florida summers are a little bit off. Even with the AC going, it's still a touch moist. Anyway, I think the colors were fantastic. I mean, even down to the box art. I mean, you see the red, the black, the gray. It is a very interesting way to have all that kind of coming together and just enhance everything. The third reason I like this so much is the character involvement. It's definitely something I can relate to, even in the beginning, being from a military family and having to, sorry about that, travel to a new school and start all over again. I can understand where Jessica Harper's character is coming from, whether it's kind of being bullied by some of the people made fun of as the new person, or even a couple of friends that want to be nice to you right out of the gate. I think the character interaction was spot on in the beginning of that movie from the new person perspective, to her developing that one close friend later on, which once again, something I can relate to, although I never went to a dance school, thank God. I dance like a shuffle with 2 left feet. The only dance I'm good at is the pigeon, and we all know what that is. But I digress. Just to the overall, from the headmistress, interacting with Jessica Harper's character, to her interacting with the other characters, And Josh brought up a very good point. He actually said there was definitely some overacting in some scenes, but that actually added to the overall creep vibe of this movie. And I definitely agree with him, because in some scenes, yes, it is a little bit over the top. But it's not in... How do I put this in a polite way? It's not like a new 21st century American horror remake, or an American horror movie in general, where it's over the top and dramatic in a bad way with, like, for example, horrible example, it's still an example, House of Wax. I mean, let's face it, that movie was a piece of garbage. Or even some of the other horror movies, like the sequel, or I guess the prequel to John Carpenter's The Thing, or looking at my movie collection. Yeah, you're right, I don't have any bad horror movies on my library. Sorry. Annabelle was not exactly a good one. The only real modern-day horror director that I can say is very good with the character involvement, the character interactions, whether it's over the top or not, would be James Wan, but that's entirely different. I think it's executed very well. And once again, ties into the creep factor. And just the overall feeling of this. Right out of the gate, from just when you see Jessica Harper's character walking down the hall, you have this kind of feeling of foreboding, and then it's even more accented when she interacts with the cab driver, to when she meets her classmates, when she meets the headmaster, when she works with her friend. It's very well done. The next thing that I like a whole lot is the audio, which we're going to be a little bit nitpicky here, because the audio volume was definitely all over the place in every which way. That, once again, that's a technical thing, and I'm just going to go on a limb and say, because it was done in the 70s, I'm going to say it was pretty much, rocking the reels and spliced over the video. So, I mean, it definitely was. I had to keep cranking down the volume, cranking it up. It was all over, but you know what? It still worked well. The soundtrack and the overall background ambience was done by the progressive band Goblin, and that will get under your skin quickly. It's subtle. It's not like a lot of modern movies where it hits you like a wall of sound, or it's not like, for example, even Psycho, the wah in the shower scene or anything like that. It builds up, and it gets under your skin like a snowflake under your fingernails, and it just stays there. Okay, that was a bad simile, but you get the picture. From the beginning to, it's coming, or that a death scene is about to happen, because you start to hear some of the music by Goblin in the background, or do you? It could be a death scene coming up. It could be just a regular other scene with character interactions. It could be an allusion to a future scene. You don't know, and that's the best part about it, is you could think one thing and get something completely different, and it's very well executed. I mean, and it does stay for the bulk of this movie. It comes and goes a little bit. For the most part, you hear some version of Goblin's music in the background. But once again, it just makes the hair on the back of your neck stand on end, and it's very well done. And even the special sound effects that go in for certain things, like I said, the volume's a little over the top and hideous at times, but it still works out well. And then one other thing before I talk about the plot in a nutshell are the effects. It's raw, it's gritty, and while it is considered under modern effects low budget, for a movie that came out in the late 1970s, it was spot on. And I think the characters and the special effects and the blood and the gore, minimal but still there, was a lot better and a lot more well done than, say, if CGI blew its load all over it. You have a modern day horror movie that is a CGI explosion extraordinaire to the point you're just like, oh my god. Or even something just very Uncanny Valley-ish. And then you have an older horror movie like Suspiria, where if somebody's getting stabbed, it is a retractable blade, and there's also a kind of a prop that is called a bleeder, where it's not only just a retractable blade, it's hollow, and it leaves a stain of blood from a thing of fake makeup. How do I know this? I'm a movie buff. What's your excuse? or somebody getting their throat slit, or somebody else getting killed or just maimed or anything like that. It's very up close, and you see it with the blood. And once again, considered low budget or considering a B movie compared to normal standards, but if you look at it at that point, it was very intricate, it was very well done, and it just worked very perfectly, in my opinion. And I know Josh liked it as well. And his girlfriend was going to watch it with us, but something happened, she couldn't, but she pretty much enjoyed it as well from what I could tell. She definitely said it was strange, but that fits the overall atmosphere to this movie to a T. And it all blends with the camera angles, it all blends with the color, it all blends with the audio. It all works itself out into one triptych of overall creepiness and enjoyment. So that being said, plot in a nutshell, because once again, I want you guys to go out and see this movie for yourselves. Jessica Harper's character is a American ballet dancer called Susie Bannion, and she is in Germany to learn at this world-renowned dance academy. And during this time, she realizes strange things are going on. In the beginning, when she walks up to the door of this famous dance academy, a girl runs away into the woods, pretty much screaming for her life, and minutes later is killed by an unseen assailant. And then that death scene, without question, is probably the most amazing opening death scene that I have seen, no pun intended, in the horror film genre. From the atmosphere leading up to the actual scene, to her being killed and attacked. And I'm not trying to sound gross or anything like that, but the camera angles, the effects, the color, once again, it all goes into that. And then the first scene ends on this crazy note. Once again, I'm not going to go into details. I'm sure if you are a very curious individual, I'm sure it's probably on YouTube somewhere, but I leave that up to you. So Susie is she's learning at this academy, and people start getting hurt, people start dying. Her friend dies after a while, and there's one scene that Josh and I definitely found a little bit questionable when her friend died, but that's a whole different ballgame. And it's definitely a weird thing that happens, and she learns a little bit more of the lore of the dance academy, and overall discovers what is at play here. But leading up to that, it's strong, it's inventive, it's intricate, it's interesting, it's creepy. It's a down-and-out, actually creepy movie. It's not a gore fest like, say, for something like Eli Roth or Lucio Fulci or Andreas Schnass or anything like that. And once again, it gets under your skin, and I like that. And God, I really don't want to give away too many plot points, but what separates Suspiria and the Three Mothers trilogy, I guess, as a whole, is that there's a supernatural involvement. And that's not always the case for other Giallo films, but in this case, it works. And you don't find out about it until the last maybe 15-20 minutes of the movie. So you can actually think it's one thing in the beginning to the middle, and then the last act of the movie is this creepy supernatural bit. And yes, there's a little bit of exposition dump, like Josh pointed out, during that time frame to kind of set the stage for the last part of the movie. But even an exposition dump itself, it kind of worked. It wasn't 100%, it definitely was flawed, but it still fit in and didn't detract from the creepy factor at all. But that's my thoughts on this movie. Once again, liked it a lot, obviously, as I have it on Blu-ray. Go out and check it out for yourself. You don't even have to be a horror buff to like this. It's, once again, a mysterious thriller, and the gore, while present, is minimal. You're not going to get a blood explosion extraordinaire all over your face watching it, but if you want a good 90-minute romp of creepiness, this is the film for y'all. So with that being said, I hope you guys like this first one. I'm going to do at least 2 more Giallo films this month. I'm hoping for 3 more. I want to make it a nice 4 even number. Maybe I can do 1 a week, maybe even 2 a week if I can hack it out. But other than that, let me know what you think in the comments below. But with that being said, y'all have a wonderful evening, and I'll catch you on the flip side, alright? Peace.